What's up, and welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Tuesday, September 5th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Scott White, and hope everybody had a fantastic Labor Day weekend. Today on the show, lots to talk about. Big news from the weekend, including an update on Shohei Ohtani, the most added players, both hitters and pitchers. Trea Turner is on a tear. Turner. Before we get started, help us out by liking this video and subscribing on YouTube if you haven't already. And if you're listening on the audio side, download, follow, and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. I know football is coming. Everyone's excited. I get it, but we're still going to be here doing 5 podcasts per week throughout September. Maybe you got eliminated from your head-to-head matchups, whatever it might be. I would encourage you to stick around. We're obviously going to talk about a bunch of prospects in September and what they're doing, and we'll have some thoughts for next season as well, some very early 2024 thoughts. So just some reasons to stick around here throughout the end of the season. Scott, you and I are officially enemies for the next 2 weeks as we square off in the semifinals of the Podcast Points League. Are you ready?
I hope so. I set a lineup. Let's check in. Oh boy, you're up 1 point.
It's going to be a slobber knocker, man.
1 point. This is a 2-week playoff matchup because that's how we always do it. For the head-to-head leagues, reduce the element of luck a little bit, reduce the impact of 2-start pitchers a little bit. So this is it's gonna take a while to sort this out. I am the higher seeded team. I had a first round bye. You advanced to round 2 to face me, and so far you're up 1 point.
So far, so good.
You had Merrill Kelly. I had Cole Reagans. They kind of canceled each other out.
They really did, man. Merrill Kelly, 31 fantasy points. We'll talk about him later on. Of course, we'll talk about Cole Reagans, 29.5 fantasy points here on Monday. Let's give a shout out to the other people who are still left in the playoffs as well. Kyle and Aubrey, they're on the other side of the bracket, so they'll be facing one of you and me in the finals here, Scott. And in the For the People podcast league, the final four, Chris G, Corey, Alfredo, and Scotty Dubs still alive. I got knocked out last week by Chris. Not nice. Anyway, let's talk about the weekend. Some highlights here, some performers. Let's jump in.
In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
Let me redo that. I did not mean to press that button.
Oh my goodness gracious.
All right, Scott. I'm just going to go ahead and start us off here with the homer pick. I want to talk about Jasson Dominguez, who made his major league debut on Friday as a 20-year-old, obviously a very hyped up prospect from the time he was signed, 16 years old back in the day, and comparisons to Mike Trout and all these kind of legends and crazy stuff. First swing in his major league career against Justin Verlander in opposite field home run on Friday. He finished 1 for 4, actually collected a hit in each game this weekend, then hit another home run on Sunday off Christian Javier. He's 68% rostered. So far, so good. And we've got a segment coming up, the 10 most added hitters from the weekend. No surprise. Jasson Dominguez up to 68% rostered. He was the most added hitter. Should he have been, Scott? Do you agree with this move getting up to 68%? Because to me, that sounds like he's probably being added in some 3 outfielder leagues as well.
Well, I don't think 68% is too high. I do wonder if there were some other hitters worth adding more than Jasson Dominguez this weekend, which we'll get to, I'm sure. So I'll say this. Here's what we learned about Jasson Dominguez over the weekend. 1, we learned that he's going to bat every day. Like, he's a priority for the Yankees. He started all 3 games over the weekend. The Yankees didn't play on Monday, so obviously we're just talking about 3 games. We'll be talking about 4 games for a lot of players. We're only talking about 3 for the Yankees, though. He started all 3 games. He started 2 of them as the number 3 hitter. So clearly getting playing time for Jasson Dominguez is a priority for the Yankees down the stretch. We learned that much. 2, we learned he's not intimidated up there. As you pointed out, very first at bat, he hits a home run off a slam dunk Hall of Famer in Justin Verlander.
Double his age, by the way.
Double his age.
Exactly double his age.
Yeah, I mean, that's clearly he's not intimidated. He's not overwhelmed by being in the majors. Now, does that mean that he's going to produce as a 20-year-old, that major league pitchers as a whole aren't going to get the better of him? No, that doesn't necessarily mean that. And I will point out, you mentioned it was an opposite field home run. Opposite field home run. Dominguez was batting left-handed. He's a switch hitter in Houston. So it was into the Crawford boxes. It was one, I think StatCast said it was one of 4 parks where that would have been a home run. Also, his second home run was 358 feet. So the first was 360. The second was 358. These were wall scrapers. These were not hit especially hard. So I think that does paint them in a little bit different of a light. That doesn't mean Jasson Dominguez isn't worth adding. Certainly in 5 outfielder leagues, it sounds like those are already covered given his roster rate. In 3 outfielder leagues, it's not a bad idea to invest in upside, but I could probably come up with 36 to 40 outfielders that I'd rather have than Jasson Dominguez right now. So, I hate to say don't add him in those shallower formats, but use judgment, because I don't think we have learned some things about him this weekend, but I don't think one of the things we've learned is that he's going to be somebody who can carry your team.
The 6th most added hitter on CBS this weekend was Adam Duvall. He's up to 75% rostered, also an outfielder. Would you rather have Duvall or Jasson Dominguez?
I mean, until it's clear that he's cooled off, Duvall. And it looked like he might be starting to over the weekend, but then he homered on Sunday, and it's like, well, now you're still talking about 8 home runs in 12 games or something like that. So I think Duvall is the hot hand play, especially since we're into the playoffs right now in fantasy, is the better choice.
2 other outfielders not on the most added list, but also pretty hot. Seiya Suzuki, 2 more home runs this weekend. 24 games since that small mental break that he had earlier in August. Seiya Suzuki batting .337 with 6 home runs, 19 runs scored, and 15 RBI. He's up to 70% rostered. And Nolan Jones, over his last 5 games, has 8 hits, 1 homer, 3 steals, still batting .282, has an .872 OPS. He is 66% rostered. Scott, rank the 4. Adam Duvall, Jasson Dominguez, Seiya Suzuki, Nolan Jones.
Let me see. I'm counting up Adam Duvall's home run to see if I can give an accurate statistic. So that's 8 home runs in 14 games now, with Monday's game added in for Adam Duvall. Okay, so I'm ranking these outfielders that you want to talk about. Run through them again for me.
Duvall, Dominguez, Suzuki, and Nolan Jones.
I'm going to go Nolan Jones 1.
And
I think I'm going to go Suzuki 2. And Duvall 3. And Jasson Dominguez 4.
I always love when we have an oh my goodness gracious player and then we wind up ranking him at the bottom of the list, right? But we do have to be realistic with it. Like I'm excited for Jasson Dominguez. It's a top prospect who came up and hit 2 home runs over the weekend. I think in general we should be excited about it, but I think, like you said, we also should temper expectations somewhat as well. So,
and you're giving me great alternatives here.
Sure. Yeah.
It's not like you're saying Mickey Moniak or Jasson Dominguez,
Right.
So those are, Nolan Jones especially, it's baffled me how his roster rate has remained so low, because the production has been awesome. And he has the advantage of playing half his games at Coors Field. So, I think that's a pretty easy call. And the thing is, like, even if Jasson Dominguez goes off and has this historic run for a 20-year-old outfielder that gets him in the early round conversation for next year, it's September 5th. Like, when is it going to be obvious that that's happening? And like, how much time will be left in the season that we see that's happening? Oh, well, clearly this is a must-start guy. I don't know. I think the timing works against him, is all I'm saying.
All right. Well, from one New York prospect to another, Scott, your player of the weekend.
Yeah, so we're going to lead with both the prospects here, kind of thematically. I'm going to go with Ronny Mauricio. Now, I told you before the show, just in case anybody's freaking out, I really think the 2, oh my goodness gracious, players we should have gone with were Mitch Garver and Royce Lewis. We'll get to them. But like Jasson Dominguez, Ronny Mauricio started all 3 games for the Mets, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They, like the Yankees, had an off day Monday, so we don't know about that. But started all 3 games, all 3 at second base. There was some question where he'd play. They bumped Jeff McNeil to left field. So it does seem like playing Ronny Mauricio is an actual priority for the Mets. And he stole 2 bases too, which is great. It's, he had more than 20 steals in the minors. It's good to see him putting that to use right away. The thing that really made me say, oh my goodness gracious, for Ronny Mauricio this weekend, though, his very first at bat. So, Dominguez homered off a Hall of Famer in his first at bat. Ronny Mauricio, in his first at bat, hit a ball 117.3 miles per hour. It went for a double, so it wasn't just like a loud out or anything. 117.3 miles per hour is the hardest hit ball for any Met this season. And need I remind you, the Mets have a feller by the name of Pete Alonso. He hasn't hit a ball that hard this season. Mauricio, his very first at bat, he hits a ball that hard. And so, I do think there's been a certain, I think there's been some sentiment. He's had cold stretches this year. So there's been a certain sentiment that, oh, what's the big deal about Ronny Mauricio? Why do you keep talking about him? I mean, first of all, he did hit 292 with 23 homers and 24 steals during his time in the minors. But, there are flaws. He doesn't walk much. And in the past, strikeouts have been an issue, but not so much this year. He hit a ball 117.3 miles per hour. It's such a small group of players that can do that, and it speaks to the upside he has. I feel like he's a guy at 22 years old who did take a leap this year that put him on our radar even in redraft leagues. But there's still more in there. There's still another leap he can take because he is capable of impacting the ball in a way very few players can. The logical next question is probably Mauricio or Jasson Dominguez. Which would you rather roster? And this is a great way to put it all into perspective. I would rather roster Dominguez. I do think outfield is a greater need for people by and large, certainly in 5 outfielder leagues. And the overall ceiling, I was just talking up Mauricio's ceiling. It may be even higher for Dominguez. But if we're speaking to leagues where 350 plus players are rostered, both of these guys probably need to be rostered. And that's generally rotisserie leagues with the extra lineup spots to fill.
Correct. And Ronny Mauricio, by the way, that exit velocity, 117.3, not just the hardest by a Mets player this year, the hardest by a Mets player in more than 2 years. And it was also the hardest hit ball on a player's first career hit in the StatCast era. So again, to put all those things in perspective, it was hit really hard and pretty impressive stuff there by Ronny Mauricio. Mentioned Dominguez was the most added hitter. Ronny Mauricio was the 5th most added hitter this weekend. The 3 hitters just in between them, Davis Schneider up to 54%, JP Crawford up to 65%, who hit 2 more home runs this weekend, continues to have a great second half with the Mariners, and Luis Rengifo, the 4th most added hitter on CBS. He's up to 50%. Scott, how would you rank those middle infield options? Davis Schneider, JP Crawford, Luis Rengifo, Ronny Mauricio.
I would rank them. Davis Schneider, number 1.
That's
how you like that. JP Crawford, number 2. And then Mauricio, 3, Rengifo, 4. I think Rengifo, his ceiling doesn't really compare to the others, and he's a hot hand right now, and that's fine if you want to use him for that. It's a close call between those top 2, Davis Schneider and JP Crawford. I think Crawford is especially good in points leagues because the walk to strikeout ratio is so great. He's more than 80 walks. I was commenting on this because I wrote about both of those players in Monday's edition of Waiver Wire, Davis Schneider and JP Crawford. JP Crawford has averaged more head-to-head points per game this season with this recent hot streak of his than Bo Bichette. He has like a 60 walk advantage on Bichette, which is helping to factor into that. But no, the bottom line is Crawford has emerged as a certainly a viable starting shortstop. Not quite as useful in a standard 5x5 league because he's not big on, he's hit a decent number of home runs this year, but that's not really his forte. So it is a close call between Crawford and Davis Schneider at the top. But I do want to point out with Schneider that, let's see, what did he do here on Monday? Was he in the lineup? He was out of the lineup. He pinch hit, went 0 for 1. He had started, let's see, 8 straight games prior to sitting on Monday. Had Davis Schneider bouncing all over the place, third base, second base, left field, DH. They've just been looking to get his bat in the lineup. During that 8-game stretch, Schneider hit .429 with 3 homers, a triple, 5 doubles, a stolen base, and more walks than strikeouts, 7-5 for Davis Schneider. So he's working toward picking up multi-eligibility. He's a huge on-base threat. That was true in the minors too. The exit velocities won't blow you away for Schneider, but as we've talked about with Zach Geloff, he hardly ever puts the ball on the ground. A lot of line drives, which are good for batting average, a lot of fly balls, which are good for power, especially if you're pulling them a lot, which is another thing Schneider does well. So everything he's doing in the minors, basically backed up by what he was doing at AAA Buffalo. The batting average, I think, was like in the 270 range at AAA, but the on-base percentage was well over 400, and he was hitting for plenty of power. Didn't get a lot of prospect attention at all, but I think the way he's like hasn't slowed down at all with increased exposure, and in particular the way that the plate discipline has carried over makes me pretty bullish on Schneider moving forward, as long as he can continue to get at bats for the Blue Jays.
He could turn out to be a sneaky keeper league dynasty asset as well. I believe Whit Merrifield is in the final year of his contract. So if they can find a way to, have Davis Schneider be an everyday player at the start of next season, I think it's a pretty sneaky player to have on your roster in those formats as well. Players, hitters 6 through 10 in the most added list on CBS here from the weekend. Mentioned Adam Duvall. He's up to 75% rostered. Royce Lewis also up to 75%. Mitch Garver, 55%. And then Hunter Goodman and DJ Stewart, more so for deeper leagues down there. But we got to talk about Royce Lewis and Mitch Garver. Lewis, the dude is locked in right now. 3 for 5 with a sock and a shoe on Sunday. Then went 3 for 4 with his 11th home run on Monday. His 3rd grand slam in the past week. 18 games since returning from the IL for Royce Lewis. He's hitting .306, 7 homers, 24 RBI, 3 steals, hitting the ball hard, putting it in the air a ton, and it is working out very well right now for Royce Lewis. Mitch Garver also red hot, 4 for 4 with a double dong on Sunday, 2 for 3 with his 16th home run here on Monday as well, having a huge second half. Scott, talk to me about Royce Lewis and Mitch Garver.
Well, I'm glad Royce Lewis's roster rate is finally getting up there because we've talked about it a lot the past 2 weeks, how his major league career has been nothing short of studly so far. In the majors, we're talking just a handful of games last year, but in the majors between last year and this year, Royce Lewis is at .314 with 13 homers and .901 OPS. And now a 56-game sample. This for a former number 1 overall pick who, hits the ball pretty hard. It's not like there's a lot of reason to think he's faking this. The plate discipline could be better, I guess. But when you're talking about potential waiver wire pickups, that's being a little nitpicky, I think. And certainly with what he's done here with the grand slams, if you have been starting Royce Lewis in a head-to-head categories league the past couple of weeks, he has carried you in RBI. Like he has been one of the clutchest pickups you could ask for with those grand slams. I don't think he has a particular knack for hitting grand slams or anything. I think that's obviously just a bit of the luck of the draw there. But the point is, he's a good hitter, and so he did what good hitters do, regardless of how many men are on base ahead of them. And it's time to treat him like a must-start player, whether it's at third base or shortstop. I think if we're talking points league specifically, I might actually give the edge to JP Crawford because the plate discipline, and they're kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum there, but it's a very close call in that format. It's not a close call at all in categories leagues. Lewis is a must.
All right, quickly on Mitch Garver, by the way, mentioned what he's been doing. Would you move Garver ahead of Keibert Ruiz, Cal Raleigh, Yainer Diaz? It feels like those are the top catchers we've talked about over the past couple of weeks. But Mitch Garver in the second half, batting .307, 12 homers, a 1035 OPS, playing every day, batting in the middle of the Rangers lineup. Would you move Garver ahead of those names?
I think every single one you mentioned, the one hesitation maybe is Ruiz in a points league, but even then, here's what stands out to me about Garver beyond the production, which has been amazing. So this home run he hit Monday was his 11th since the start of August, an OPS well over 1,000 during that time. He had the 4-for-4, 2-homer performance Sunday. So a huge weekend, but really a huge month and a week for Mitch Garver. But what stands out most of all, this start he made on Monday was his, let me make sure I get this right. He started now 18 of the Rangers' past 19 games. Every single day, Mitch Garver is in the lineup for them, usually at DH, which, his performance has earned him that, but sometimes backing up Jonah Heim at catcher. But that's more than the typical catcher-eligible player gets to play. And in points leagues especially, that makes a huge difference. So, yeah, I think Garver is I think you should treat him like a stud going forward. And we forget this because he's let us down so much over the years with injuries and inconsistent playing time and whatnot. I looked into this for their entire careers. Garver has homered at a higher rate than Will Smith, which we think of as like the gold standard for power hitting catchers, right? If you just do home runs divided by plate appearances, Garver has done it more frequently than Will Smith. And we're seeing the dividends of him getting the at-bats he needs to shine.
Last question on Mitch Garver. This is one that a couple of people asked me on Twitter, actually. Would you drop Salvador Perez for Mitch Garver? I think we're at a point in the season, Scott, where if you have big name veterans that maybe are slumping or, really haven't been great in the second half, you might be able to go with the hotter hand in a shallower type league. Would you make that swap, Salvador Perez for Mitch Garver?
Yeah, I think so. Though Salvador Perez did just have a 2-homer game on Friday. So I know he was cold before then, but it could change very quickly. And he obviously has an impressive track record of his own. But I mean, the numbers I just gave for Garver, it's you think at some point when he has one of these stretches where he's not playing much and he's banged up, okay, when he comes back, he can't possibly be as good as when we last saw him have a stretch like that. And apparently so. He's come back and he looks as good as he ever has. And he is healthy right now. He is playing every day right now. So I think that's right at the line, Salvador Perez versus Mitch Garver. But as of right now, I'm inclined to say I'd prefer Garver.
Yeah, that would make Mitch Garver a top 6 or 7 catcher rest of season. And I think that's fair, given the way that he's played. A quick, oh my goodness gracious, shout-outs, a few of them from this past weekend. Trea Turner, the guy just continues to do it right now. I mean, since that ovation in Philly on August 4th, Trea Turner has been amazing. He had 3 homers and 2 steals this weekend. He's got 7 home runs in his last 7 games. And since that date, August 4th, 28 games for Trea Turner. He is batting .362 with 12 homers, 26 runs, 33 RBI, 4 steals, 92.3 average exit velocity. Just last week on CBS, he put up 57.5 fantasy points. Any quick thoughts on Trea Turner?
I remember Corey Seager had a year like this. I'm trying to remember which one it was. But the production was underwhelming all year, and then he just went bonkers in September, which in Trea Turner's case, really, it started in August. We still have, most of September to go. Maybe he won't sustain it right up until the end, but it certainly changed everyone's perspective on Corey Seager heading into the following season. The fact he was able to redeem himself late like that, and certainly it's proven to be. Everyone was right to change their opinion on Corey Seager, to buy into that late hot streak, because he's gone on to be better than ever since then. So hopefully that happens with Trea Turner. I know I've been skeptical that he'll deserve a first round pick next year, or maybe even a second round pick. But I mean, if he keeps this up over the final 4 weeks, then obviously I'll have to change my tune.
Yeah, the overall numbers for Trea Turner, he's up to 262 batting average, 761 OPS, 22 home runs, 25 steals. Depending on how hot he stays, I mean, he could go, can he approach 30? I mean, I don't know if he can hit 8 home runs in a month, but, he could wind up somewhere. Yeah, I mean,
he would have to do it in consecutive months.
Right. But, I mean, he's probably going to wind up somewhere 25 to 30 home runs, potentially 30 plus steals, which is not far off from what we wanted, but obviously we would have liked it better distributed throughout the course of the season for Trea Turner. Ronald Acuna too. I mean, just bananas type stuff. Thursday, 3 for 4 with a sock and a shoe. He created his 30-60 club. Friday, 2 for 4 with a sock and a shoe. Saturday, 1 for 5 with his 32nd home run. Last week, I predicted 35 home runs, 75 steals for Ronald Acuna by the end of the year. I might have sold him short. So we'll see where that winds up. He put up 56 points in 56 fantasy points on CBS last week as well. Yeah, Ronald Acuna has been amazing all season long. Let's take our first break. When we return, we will talk about some of the big news from the weekend. We'll do that right after this.
Wake up to football highlights and news from around the world with the one and only Morning Footy team.
Rise and shine, football fans. Welcome to Morning Footy.
Start your all-day football craze with Morning Footy, part of the all-new Golazo Network.
Welcome back into Fantasy Baseball Today. Quick reminder to join our FBT Facebook group. Obviously, it's free. You can go to facebook.com/groups/Fantasy Baseball Today, or just log on to Facebook and search Fantasy Baseball Today. You'll find it. You can join up, ask any types of questions that you have. Waiver wire, trades, I'm assuming not happening. Maybe Dynasty League trades at this point. But yeah, you can ask any type of questions. And again, for free. Our FBT Facebook group. Last week, I teased that I did an interview with a former Yankee great. You can find that on demand on both YouTube and in the podcast feed. Bernie Williams was the player I interviewed, and such a nice guy. Had some cool insight hearing him talk about Jasson Dominguez, former Yankee center field legend, talking about maybe the center fielder of the future. So really cool stuff. Make sure to check that out as well. Let's talk the biggest news from the weekend. Shohei Ohtani's agent on Monday revealed that Ohtani will need surgery at some point. He will need a procedure. That's how they've labeled it. They didn't say what type of procedure. He said it's, quote, inevitable that something is going to have to happen. And then a few hours later, Ohtani was scratched from the lineup with, quote, right oblique tightness. I don't know, Scott. Color me a little suspicious on that one, but the timing is very weird here. Your thoughts on Shohei Ohtani?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know why they'd have to make up an injury to take him out of the lineup. But I don't know. It could be related. As I've said before, if I was Ohtani's agent, I would be begging him every day to just shut it down for the season. But maybe that's just me. Maybe that's why I'm not an agent. I don't know. If he does, if this oblique is what, is more than a day-to-day thing, as oblique injuries often are, that's good news for you in our head-to-head matchup in the podcast league, because I have him started as my utility player.
Oh, I know the feeling, Scott. As I mentioned last week, same thing happened to me with Matt McClain. It's, he went on the IL 10, 15 minutes before lineups locked. So that obviously was not great. We'll see what happens with Shohei Ohtani, but he's going to go for more testing on Tuesday for the oblique. And obviously, if he has any type of strain or grade 1, grade 2, my guess is they're probably just going to shut him down for the rest of the season. The other big news from the weekend, Julio Urias was arrested and charged with felony domestic violence late on Sunday night. and he served a 20-game suspension for domestic violence back in 2019 as well. Arias was placed on administrative leave Monday afternoon. Obviously, it's a very unfortunate situation. Just hate reading things like this happening in sports as often as they do, frankly. But and it kind of feels weird talking about fantasy, talking about this from a fantasy perspective. But unfortunately, that's what we got to do, Scott. We're here to talk about it. And Julio Arias still 97% rostered. My guess is he will not pitch again this season. Likely looking at another suspension at some point. What do you think about, do we drop Julio Arias? Do you think we could see like a Ryan Pepio? I know Emmett Sheehan started over the weekend and looked pretty solid. Your thoughts on this whole situation?
Well, we've been pretty excited about what Pepio's been able to do, so I don't think it's a bad idea to make a play for him if you haven't already. Understandably, if you haven't already, because the Dodgers have been so indecisive what they want to do with that rotation spot. Bringing a guy in, he pitches well, shipping him out for another guy. They have another rotation opening that's obviously going to change the math there. As is for what you do with Arias, I don't think it's wise to do anything just yet. I agree with you that he's probably not going to pitch again this season, and who knows when he'll pitch again. But there have been times when I thought that about other players, and they weren't out for long at all. So, like, Arias is somebody who, if he is pitching for the Dodgers, then of course he has fantasy value. So I would just hang back for now and wait for more information.
The other big news from the weekend, Max Scherzer left his last start early on Friday due to right forearm tightness. He did throw a bullpen over the weekend and has been cleared to start this Wednesday against the Astros. Funny the way this works, by the way, too. That matchup will be Max Scherzer going up against Justin Verlander, former Mets teammates. How about that? I actually benched Max Scherzer in our matchup, Scott, the 12-team points league. I had John Gray going up against Oakland, which I thought was a pretty awesome matchup. John Gray, I know he's been a little bit shaky, but I just kind of worry about this. Like, maybe Scherzer kind of suffers a setback while he's pitching or leaves the start early. I don't know. I kind of felt a little scared. What do you think?
I'm sorry. Who were you asking about?
Max Scherzer.
Yeah, I mean, the fact they're already saying he's cleared to start Wednesday, I'm not going to say I'm totally at ease with that, but the way Max Scherzer has pitched since joining the Rangers, I'm obviously not going to sit him in fantasy. Hopefully they've used all the caution they need to use, and he'll be fine, and we'll never talk about this again. But it does give me some trepidation for sure, the forearm injury.
The Reds promoted pitching prospect Connor Phillips, who is set to start on Tuesday against the Mariners. He's 22 years old. He was the 64th overall pick back in 2020. And this season in the minors, a 3.86 ERA, a 141 whip, 154 strikeouts, over 105 innings for Connor Phillips. He was much better at AA than AAA, where it was the league he was pitching in where they had the pre-tack baseballs, right, Scott? So it might explain some of that discrepancy between his AA numbers and his AAA numbers. This Connor Phillips that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on him? He's 13% rostered. Would you be looking to add him, I don't know, in deeper leagues, 15-team leagues, stuff like that?
I wasn't really motivated because it seems like an obvious case of a spot start. They have the Reds have several pitchers who are on the COVID IL. It's apparently making the way through the clubhouse. Brandon Williamson, that's whose spot Phillips is taking on Tuesday. He's one of them. I can't remember who else is, but
Hunter Green is on the COVID IL.
Hunter Green and the guy who just came back, Ben Lively, I believe, is as well.
Graham Ashcraft went on the actual IL too. So that's why I'm thinking maybe Connor Phillips could stick around, but I don't know.
I mean, if he pitches well, there's a chance. The other thing is I don't really expect him to pitch well as much as poor as his control has been. I've said that about other pitchers, and they come up and they're throwing more strikes in the majors than they ever did in the minors. So I guess it's possible, but I'm not counting on Phillips being a significant fantasy contributor down the stretch.
All right, let's talk about the 10 most added pitchers from the weekend. Starting with the top 5, Jordan Wicks is up to 55% rostered. He had another solid outing at the Reds, 5 innings, 1 run, 3 strikeouts for him. Kyle Harrison, 64% rostered, followed up that amazing performance early last week by giving up 4 home runs in his 3rd start at the San Diego Padres. He gave up 6 runs over 5 2/3 innings. But through 3 starts now, a 4.70 ERA and a 124 WHIP for Kyle Harrison. Darius Vines, unfortunately, up to 20% rostered. He was optioned back to AAA on Saturday.
Come on, Braves. Come on. Lined up for 2 starts and everything.
What are they doing, man? What are they doing?
I had to make a lot of changes to the sleeper pitchers on Sunday when I updated. That was one of them.
Yep. And it sounds like one of Michael Soroka or Dylan Dodd could take that next turn in the rotation for the Braves. The other 2, Matt Manning at 42% rostered, Kyle Hendricks at 70%. Obviously, we'll give Darius Vines the boot here, Scott, but how would you rank Jordan Wicks, Kyle Harrison, Matt Manning, and Kyle Hendricks, 4 of the top 5 most added pitchers?
I'm going to give Harrison the slight edge over Hendricks. Hendricks is the boring, steady guy. Harrison is the exciting, super high upside guy. So I'll go Harrison 1, Kyle Hendricks 2. Those are the 2 who probably are pretty close to must roster. And then Jordan Wicks 3 and Matt Manning 4. I will say about Harrison, there are reasons to be encouraged by this start, even though he gave up 6 earned runs, even though he allowed 4 home runs. He went 5 2/3 innings. For the 2nd straight start, he went further than he went in any minor league start this year. So the Dodgers are treating him like a conventional starter, which was a big hurdle to clear.
The Giants.
But the Giants, excuse me, were treating Kyle Harrison like a legitimate starter, which was a big hurdle for him to clear, and one I wasn't sure he would have a chance to clear. He also walked just 2 in those 5 2/3 innings. Walks were the other big hurdle for him to clear. He threw 61% of his pitches for strikes in this one, which isn't great, but it's better than the 59% of the 59% strike rate he had in the minors. So the biggest concerns we had for Kyle Harrison when he was promoted, this start still alleviated them, even though the final line was bad for him. And I thought Gabe Kapler's quote after the start was telling, because he basically said the same thing. He said, "Not trying to discount the outcome. It wasn't a great outcome for the Giants, and Kyle's disappointed about that. But I'm very confident in him going forward. I'm very confident that what he did tonight, if he does it over and over, it will work, and it will beat a lot of major league hitters." And that was kind of my takeaway as well. So it was, I guess, comforting to see the Giants manager say the same thing. Kyle Harrison's stuff is amazing. If he's able to command it, they're going to be great results. It didn't happen. He didn't get those results over the weekend, but he was, able to be efficient enough to go almost 6 innings, and that's good to see.
All right. The rest of the most added pitchers from the weekend, Jose Quintana up to 44%. He is in line for 2 starts this week against the Nationals and the Twins. We had Javier Assad up to 56%. He continues to pitch well. This weekend at the Reds, 8 shutout innings with 7 strikeouts, 11 swinging strikes on 98 pitches for Javier Assad. He's down to a 2.69 ERA and a 1.18 WHIP. Jesse Schultens, 17%. Scott, did you recommend this guy? Because I didn't recommend him.
Oh, no.
I'm trying to figure out why people were. I know he had 2 starts.
A string of good starts there, but I don't even think we ever talked about him because we knew there was nothing to see there.
Yeah, that's a weird one. Tanner Scott is up to 43%, and of course, Cole Reagans continues to climb closer to 100%. He's up to 89% after another great start here on Monday. Cole Reagans. Anything else on this group? Let's see. Javier Assad. I feel like we haven't given him his credit. Scott, I know he doesn't get strikeouts, but he's done a really good job limiting hard contact. He gets ground balls.
Yeah.
Are we selling him too short?
Well, I did finally feature him in Monday's edition of Waiver Wire on after this latest start where he went 8 innings, struck out 7. That's the thing. Like, my biggest objection to Javier Assad was he's not striking anybody out, and then back-to-back starts with 7 strikeouts. So he started striking guys out. It's as if he heard me or something. So now this is a 5-start stretch for him with a 1.62 ERA, a 0.93 whip. It kind of reminds me of Christopher Sanchez in that it looked like there was nothing to see with this guy at first, but then he starts to have some success and you dig a little deeper and it's like, oh, he has a 48% ground ball rate. It's not Sanchez's 58% ground ball, which is, about as high as it gets, but it's still high for Assad. He's still good at putting the ball on the ground, and quality of contact is low against him. I think he's 83rd percentile for average exit velocity. Yeah, that's right. Now, even with that, the expected ERA is not amazing. Even factoring in that those good quality of contact metrics for Javier Assad. So it still seems like a pretty combustible profile, and I expect he's going to have some hard days ahead. But at the same time, the Cubs have some of the best matchups for pitchers down the stretch, and I imagine Javier Assad will be appearing on my sleeper pitchers list from time to time in the weeks to come.
He does have RP eligibility as well, so a SPARP on CBS, that little cheat code for head-to-head points leagues. Scott, I assume Kyle Harrison and Kyle Hendricks are both ahead of Assad. Who would you rather have between Assad and Jordan Wicks?
I think Wicks has more talent, but it's pretty close. You're going to force me to pick. I guess I'll say Wicks.
I think so too.
But it's pretty close.
Yeah.
I do want to point out for Reagans because, obviously he continues to impress. And in this latest start Monday against the White Sox, 1 hit in 6 innings, 22 swinging strikes on 92 pitches, 7 on the fastball, 5 on the cutter, 5 on the changeup, 5 on the slider, which he hardly even threw. That was the pitch that he introduced once he rejoined the Royals rotation, has allowed him to take off like this. So now in 7 starts since that return with the Royals, 1.48 ERA, 0.94 whip, 12.7 K per 9. There probably is an example like this where a guy who, wasn't, he's kind of on the older side. It's not like he's this is his rookie season, but he's 25 years old. It's not like he was some big name prospect joining the rotation. He was, kind of kicking around in the Rangers bullpen, not putting up great numbers. Then he gets traded and he becomes this ace. And in every way, Cole Reagans looks like a legitimate ace now. It's really getting to be serious. And I don't know. Can you think of a comp? A pitcher who did something similar, the
one that came to mind most. It's not entirely the same because this pitcher did not get a lot of whiffs, but he was incredibly dominant. He was a league winner the year that happened, and it was Ranger Suarez, who also had amazing matchups. The last 3 matchups for Cole Reagans, the A's, the Pirates, the White Sox, and he's taking advantage. Again, it's not exactly the same. Reagans is putting up crazy swinging strike numbers, but if you remember, I think it was the final 7 or 8 starts. It might have been 2021. Ranger Suarez that year was amazing. So
yeah,
and he also came from the bullpen. Yeah, so that's the most clear comp for me that I came up with. So
I'm just going top of mind here. I remember Esteban Loaiza in 2003. Do you even know that name?
Because I'm I was 12 years old. I was in junior high school.
He won 21 games for the White Sox. He led the majors in strikeouts, and that was after he was a 5 ERA guy previously. So I guess it's not totally unprecedented, but it's worth pointing out Loaiza kind of turned into a pumpkin after that. And I don't expect that to happen to Reagans. I mean, he did have some prospect pedigree. It kind of, because of injuries in the minors, it kind of was forgotten. But he just, between the velocity and the fact he gets whiffs on so many different pitches, he just looks like he's here to stay as long as he can stay healthy. And as I already pointed out, Reagans has a pretty pronounced injury history.
Yep. All right, let's quickly run through the rest of the news and notes from the weekend. Luis Robert has missed 3 straight with a right quad cramp, but it sounds like he's going to try and return this Wednesday. Yordan Alvarez banged his knee in the outfield on Sunday, but was thankfully in the lineup on Monday. Good news. Bo Bichette could return from the IL when first eligible this upcoming Friday. He's currently out with a right quad strain. Felix Bautista has received an MRI on his injured right elbow, but the Orioles will wait for the inflammation to subside before a decision is made on his next steps, which doesn't sound too good to me, Scott. I mean, if there's enough inflammation where they need to wait for it to go down, it sounds kind of scary.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. I mean, look, we're expecting Tommy John for Felix Bautista. So if there's any hope of something less, I take that as good news. Though.
Don't even say the words. Sent shivers down my spine. It was reported Friday that Kodai Senga is expected to make 5 more starts this season as the Mets keep an eye on his workload. He already made one of those 5 starts, an awesome start on Friday. We'll talk about that in a bit. That would get him to 29 starts and close to 170 innings for the year. That's Kodai Senga. Nathan Eovaldi completed a bullpen session Sunday and could be activated Tuesday against the Astros. He's been out since July 18th with a strained forearm. Shane Bieber threw all of his pitches during his latest bullpen session last Thursday. Max Muncy left Sunday's game due to a shoulder injury. Dave Roberts does not believe it will be an IL situation. Jorge Soler has missed 5 straight due to right hip tightness. JD Martinez is expected to return Friday against the Nationals. Josh Young is hoping to take dry swings before the end of this week. He's been out since early August with a left thumb fracture. Alex Verdugo is unlikely to return to the Red Sox lineup until Friday as he deals with left hamstring tightness. That should mean more playing time for Willier Abreu and Cedon Rafaela, hopefully. Jonathan India could begin a rehab assignment within the next week. He's been out since July 30th with left foot plantar fasciitis. Mason Miller will be activated at some point this week. He threw 4 perfect innings Saturday at AAA, but only got up to 37 pitches. Sounds like the A's are going to be pretty cautious with him, Scott. I think, maybe he gets up to 50 pitches. I just don't see the A's letting Mason Miller throw more than, 3 to 4 innings per start. But maybe I'm wrong.
It was actually 3 innings that he worked over the weekend, not 4. He had 4 strikeouts, okay. So it was even less than that. He didn't go beyond 3 in his 5 rehab starts. Yeah, I mean that's my take too. Is I expect he'll be limited to 4 or 5 inning outings, but that's what I thought the first time he came up too, and he went 7 innings, 6 innings, his last 2 appearances before getting hurt. So I don't know. Maybe they'll be more aggressive than we're thinking again. I think in leagues where in specifically categories leagues where your biggest needs are ratios, ERA, WHIP, strikeouts to an extent, that's where Mason Miller is most attractive to me.
All right. Players who went to the IL this weekend: Riley Green with right elbow inflammation, Graham Ashcraft with a stress reaction in his right big toe, Danny Jansen with a fractured right middle finger, Brandon Williamson and Hunter Green went to the COVID IL, Michael Taylor with a right hamstring strain, Willie Castro started in center field on Monday, and Jason Adam with a left oblique strain. Some quick prospect updates. The Orioles' top prospect, Jackson Holliday, will be promoted to AAA at some point this week. In 36 games at AA, he hit .338 with 3 homers, 3 steals, and a .928 OPS.
Is it just a layover, Frank? On the way to Baltimore?
It would make some sense, right? If the Orioles really want to go for it, why not?
I get. I mean, I suppose if he hits a brick wall at AAA the way he did it at AA or High A or Low A this year, then that'll determine it. But if he hits the ground running at AAA, I mean, they haven't really had anybody to pair with Gunnar Henderson on the left side of their infield. This would solve that. And if they think Jackson Holliday, if they think there's a good chance he'll be on the opening day roster next year, why wouldn't they give him a shot here in September? If you have a roster spot to play with, I'm not saying I'd add him over Jasson Dominguez or anything, but it's not crazy to invest in Jackson Holliday at this point.
No, it is not. The Red Sox are promoting 2 of their prospects, Roman Anthony and Kyle Teal, to AA, and the Rangers promoted 17-year-old Sebastian Walcott from rookie ball to High A. Let's take our final break. When we return, I've got a few other waiver wire pitchers and some leftovers. We'll do that right after this.
It's time. The best Transformers yet.
There you go.
Is now streaming on Paramount Plus.
This is gonna be fun, man. Now let's talk to your manifestation.
Transformers: Rise of the Beast. Rated PG-13. Now streaming on Paramount Plus.
Welcome back into Fantasy Baseball. Today, let's talk waiver wire pitchers. Obviously, we mentioned the most added pitchers earlier on. These are ones that are a little bit lower down the list. The first group includes Griffin Canning, who has turned in back-to-back quality starts. At the A's this weekend, 6 innings, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts for Canning. Reese Olson pitched very well, but just didn't have many strikeouts. 7 shutout with 1 strikeout this weekend. Dakota Hudson turned in a quality start against the Pirates. 7 innings, 1 run, 2 walks, 0 strikeouts. It's the most Dakota Hudson start I think you can have. And then Hyunjin Ryu has allowed 2 earned runs or fewer in 5 of 6 starts. He was in Coors Field this weekend. 5 innings, 2 runs, 3 strikeouts for him. Scott, any enthusiasm for this group? Hyunjin Ryu, Dakota Hudson, Reese Olson, and Griffin Canning.
Well, I did add Canning and Olson to my updated sleeper pitchers for this week. When I did do that update Sunday, Canning facing the Guardians, Olson facing the White Sox, so both good matchups, both coming off good starts. I think there's a better chance Canning remains somebody that you hold on to because we've seen him put up good strikeout totals in the past. He has good swing and miss stuff. It's, he hasn't been the most reliable pitcher, but when he's on, he can miss a lot of bats. And the Angels have very good matchups moving forward. Of course, he gets Cleveland this week. Next week, they're facing the Mariners and Tigers. After that, the Rays, but also the Twins, who strike out a lot. And in the final week of the season, the Rangers, but they face the Athletics again. So there are a lot of good matchups there if Canning's turns happen to fall on the right days. And, wouldn't be a bad pickup. I don't think he's on the level of even like Javier Assad for me, but he's right behind that.
All right, waiver wire pitchers part 2. Michael King had another solid start, this one at the Houston Astros. 5 innings, 1 run, 4 strikeouts. The 5 innings and 69 pitches were both a season high for Michael King. He's up to 30% rostered, does have that RP eligibility. I mentioned Emmett Sheehan had a solid return to the Dodgers facing the Braves this weekend. Only went 4 innings, but had only allowed 1 earned run, had 6 strikeouts, 18 swinging strikes on 76 pitches for Emmett Sheehan in that one. And Taj Bradley was recalled by the Rays. He was at the Guardians this weekend. 5 innings, 2 runs, 5 walks, 7 strikeouts, kind of more of the same. We know the guy could get whiffs. There's no doubt. It's just, can he limit walks? Can he limit hard contact? He didn't show us either of those things in this start. Scott, any interest in these deeper names? Michael King, Emmett Sheehan, and Taj Bradley.
Well, I'm curious about King. If he can make this transition to the rotation, if he ends up being as effective there as he was in the bullpen, that could turn him into a real fantasy asset. I'm not convinced of that yet. Not enough to pick him up outside of the deepest leagues, but I'm certainly monitoring Michael King's performance from start to start. Bradley, yeah, a mix of good and bad in his return to the rotation, and that's kind of been his whole year. So I'm reluctant to invest much in him at this point either. And I'm not saying I'm investing in Emmett Sheehan, but this was, I think, of the 3, Sheehan showed me the most. First of all, facing the Braves, getting those 18 swinging strikes on 76 pitches. 7 came on the changeup, which he threw 29% of the time. It's usually about 16%. So he more or less doubled his changeup usage in this. And that's noteworthy because his changeup this year has a 172 batting average against and a 42% whiff rate. It is a really good pitch for Emmett Sheehan. The more he throws it, as this appearance against the Braves shows, the better he's going to be.
All right, let's quickly fire up the drop-o-meter. I've got 3 names here on the list. James Paxton, another rough outing. He only recorded 4 outs at the Royals. He gave up 6 runs, and over his last 6 starts, he has a 7.62 ERA and a 1.96 WHIP. Still 74% rostered. Scott, where are you at the drop-o-meter, 1 to 10 on James Paxton?
I'm going full 10 on this. I've been a Paxton apologist, but I mean, if he can't even get through 2 innings against the Royals, it's over. I can't trust him. I can't trust you. I don't care how deep the league is. I'd rather have Emmett Sheehan, I think, at this point.
All right. Speaking of pitchers with great matchups and getting clobbered, Mike Clevinger. Are you kidding me, man? Against the Tigers, 4 innings, 12 hits, 8 earned runs, 56% rostered, 1 to 10 on the drop-o-meter.
I mean, if I went 10 for Paxton, I guess I have to go 10 for Clevinger because I think I'd still rather have Paxton than Clevinger.
Yeah.
I wasn't really buying into Clevinger in the first place. I may have had him as a sleeper pitcher because I have to come up with 10, but it was with a lot of reluctance.
All right, and the last name is JP France. He was at the Rangers on Monday. He allowed 5 runs over 5 innings. He gave up 3 home runs in this start. Still has a respectable 3.72 ERA, but this is now 2 of his last 3 starts where he's been hit pretty hard. I know there was one start in there where he gave up 10 earned runs. Still 84% rostered. Where are you at on the drop-o-meter for JP France, 1 to 10?
All right, so I'll go a little lower on him and say 8, 7, 7.5 for JP France. I do think this start was revealing, because a couple turns ago when he got totally obliterated, we could just, okay, that happens. But now this is 2 of 3 starts where JP France has been just plain bad. And I think that's reason to believe it's probably regression here. His ERA is up to 3.72. That's still compared to a 4.64 expected ERA and a 4.52 expected FIP. So maybe even more regression to come for Mr. France.
All right. Would you drop him for Kyle Harrison or Kyle Hendricks?
Both Kyles. Yes, sir.
All right. Let's wrap up with some leftovers here. The pitching standouts from the weekend. Part 1. Kodai Senga matched a season high with 12 strikeouts against the Mariners. Joe Ryan looks like he's back Friday at the Rangers. 6 innings, 1 run, 7 strikeouts with 14 swinging strikes. Freddie Peralta continued his dominant second half. 6 innings, 1 run, 10 strikeouts with 17 swinging strikes for Freddie Peralta. And Mitch Keller looks like he's getting back on track. He was at the Cardinals. 6 innings, 1 run, 8 strikeouts. And over his last 4 starts, a 1.38 ERA and a 1.12 WHIP for Mitch Keller. Any thoughts on this first group? Keller, Peralta, Joe Ryan, and Kodai Senga.
Yeah. They're all good. I mean, Peralta's looked like an ace, and you were on this. I didn't see, I didn't know what to expect for him once he had those first couple great starts because I didn't understand what went wrong for him in the first place, that he wasn't doing this all along. But now his last 7 starts, 1.71 ERA, 0.79 WHIP, 14.8 K per 9 with an 18% swinging strike rate. And it's a 7-start stretch in which Freddie Peralta has been as good of a pitcher as there is. And so, yeah, I mean, must start, obviously. Joe Ryan looks like he's fixed after taking some time to let his groin heal. Hopefully he's able to, it certainly appears that he's able to follow through on his delivery as needed to pitch like he was earlier this season. And Mitch Keller appears to be back on track too. Still with some, he had only 10 swinging strikes on 98 pitches, despite getting these 8 strikeouts in 6 innings. But that was going on when he was, looking like an ace early in the season too. So it's a strange profile Keller has, but I think we've seen over the past year and a half, we've seen a lot more good than bad from him. And so I think my trust level remains pretty high for Mitch Keller with the way he's performed recently.
All right. Pitching standouts part 2. Max Fried had his best start of the season at the Dodgers, 7 shutout innings with 10 strikeouts in that one. Blake Snell put up another scoreless outing against the Giants, 6 shutout, 3 hits, 4 more walks, 8 strikeouts, 21 swinging strikes for Blake Snell. Chris Sale had his best start since returning from the IL at the Royals, 5 shutout innings with 5 strikeouts for him. did have 16 swinging strikes. His velocity was also down big time, 2+ miles per hour on all of his pitches. But I don't know. That seems to happen from time to time for Chris Sale. Tarek Skubal, another dominant start at the White Sox. 7 innings, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts, 20 swinging strikes for him. Anything to add on Skubal, Sale, Blake Snell, and Max Fried?
Not really. Not really. I mean, I guess Sale is the one people have the most concerns about, but other than the outings being short, I've liked what I've seen from him. His start this week is against the Orioles, so I think I may have sat him in a couple leagues just because I had better options. But I remain pretty bullish on Sale down the stretch. And these others, I mean, Fried seems to be back to form. Skubal seems to be rounding into form. He's consistently working deep into games now. They're all pretty close to must start, I'd say. Pretty close. Because as I said, I did bench Sale in a couple leagues. A couple of those really good playoff teams that I have.
That's a good call, too, because Sale has been crushed by the Orioles this year. I remember his opening day start against them. He gave up 7 runs over 3 innings. His 5th start of the year, he gave up 5 runs over 5 innings. I think they also saw him in spring training, too. So the Orioles definitely, I think they got the book there on Chris Sale. The standouts part 3, Bobby Miller had one of his more impressive starts against the Braves this weekend. 7 innings, 1 run, 5 strikeouts for him. Justin Steele made his Cy Young push on Monday. Career high 12 strikeouts over 8 shutout innings for him. 18 swinging strikes on 107 pitches against the Giants. Truly dominant start. Merrill Kelly now has double-digit strikeouts in 3 of his last 5 starts. Aaron Savali put up a career-high 12 strikeouts against the Red Sox. 5 1/3, 3 runs, 12 strikeouts to 3 walks. I noticed he threw his slider more in this start, so perhaps that's the Rays devil magic kind of coming into play here for Savali. And Grayson Rodriguez just keeps churning out quality starts at the Angels Monday night. 6 innings, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts. Lots of names here, Scott. G-Rod, Savali, Merrill Kelly, Justin Steele, and Bobby Miller. Yeah,
a lot of names here. An impressive start for Bobby Miller, especially given the competition. I think he's shown he has the kind of upside we're looking for, the kind that could separate him from the glob and maybe make him worth singling out among the glob in drafts next year. But consistency has been an issue, and that makes him a little less than a must start. Savali, I noticed the same thing with the slider. He's hardly used it at all this year. I think the 16% usage in this was the most he's had in any one start, but the numbers on it are tremendous. So if the Rays I've looked into that and are encouraging him to throw it more, I think that's ultimately good for Savali. And his strikeout rate's been way up since joining the Rays. That's also good for Savali. Grayson Rodriguez. So yes, another quality start, 7 strikeouts. That's actually the most he's had in all these quality starts. And all these starts since returning from the minors, Grayson Rodriguez had no more than 6 strikeouts until this one where he got 7. Still waiting for that 10-11 strikeout game. I say that and people I think presume you must be down on Grayson Rodriguez. No, my point is, as well as he's pitching right now, I think he can be so much better than this. And I hope we see it before the year's done.
Yeah, he's moved inside of both of our top 40 starting pitchers rest of season. That's Grayson Rodriguez in 9 starts since being recalled. 2.85 ERA and a 1.04 WHIP. He has been money. Some quick hitting leftovers. Cody Bellinger had another huge weekend. He's up to 23 home runs, 19 steals. There was also a report that 4 teams in particular plan to be pretty aggressive on Bellinger this offseason. The Cubs, Yankees, Giants, and the Padres. Kyle Schwarber, he is on one of those runs right now. He's hit 10 home runs in his last 16 games, a 26% barrel rate during that time. Back-to-back 40 home run seasons here for Kyle Schwarber. Juan Soto had a sucko kind of August, but might be bouncing back in September. He's homered in 3 straight games over the weekend. Marcell Ozuna also red hot. He's got 8 home runs over his last 13 games. Who else here? Jordan Walker looks like he might finish strong now. He's homered in 3 of his past 4 games. Pete Alonso, a double dong on Sunday. Jose Altuve, a double dong on Monday. Corey Seager, a double dong on Monday as well. Fernando Tatis had a big game on Monday, 1 for 4 with a sock and 2 shoes. He's up to 22 home runs and 25 steals. A few bullpen updates for the Marlins on Friday. Tanner Scott got the bottom of the 10th inning with a 1-run lead. He did give up an RBI single, wound up with the win in that game. And then on Sunday, also Tanner Scott pitched a clean 9th for his 4th save. He's 43% rostered if you're looking for saves at this point in the season. For the Mets on Friday, Drew Smith picked up his 3rd save. Not really sure why they didn't use Adam Ottavino or Brooks Raley there. They last pitched on Wednesday, so it felt like they should have been available. But then on Sunday, Adam Ottavino did pick up his 8th save, and he is 19% rostered. Still feels like Adam Ottavino is probably the name to have there, if you want any.
Yeah, if you want any. It does seem like a true committee, though. Maybe the truest committee in all the majors right now, and for not a very good team. Yep. The fact that Ottavino works a lot in non-save chances, yeah, it's kind of a mess. But if I did have to pick one Mets reliever to roster, it would be Ottavino.
For the Tigers, they gave Alex Lang 2 more save opportunities this weekend. He converted on both of them. Scott, would you rather have Alex Lang or Tanner Scott?
Tanner Scott, but I think they're both more rosterable than Ottavino, for instance.
Yeah, I would agree. For the Cardinals on Friday, the game was tied. Ryan Helsley pitched a clean 8th inning. That's right. He's back with the Cardinals. Jojo Romero then pitched a clean 9th. He came out for the 10th. He gave up 3 runs and took his 2nd loss. And then on Sunday, Giovanni Gallegos actually got the 9th inning and picked up his 10th save of the year. For the Rangers, Aroldis Chapman, he's kind of going through a funk right now. He got the final 2 outs in the 9th inning on Saturday with the game tied. He came back out for the 10th. He was charged with 3 runs. He took his 4th loss. And over Chapman's last 6 appearances, he has a 7.94 ERA and a 2.12 whip. I don't really know where the Rangers go from here, Scott. They don't really have many other options. I think it's still Chapman, but I don't have as much confidence anymore.
Yeah, I think Will Smith has 5 straight scoreless appearances, and Jose Leclerc has been pretty much untouched the past couple months. I still think Chapman's their best reliever. I'm hoping they stick it out with him, but they may not. It's been pretty bumpy since they moved him into the role.
All right. On Saturday for the Rockies, Justin Lawrence got the 9th inning with a 2-run lead. He gave up 3 walks, a hit, and a hit by pitch. He was then relieved by Tyler Kinley, who got the final out for his 1st save. And then for the Dodgers on Sunday, Evan Phillips was unavailable. Brusdar Graterol picked up his 7th save of the year. Let's wrap up with to stream or not to stream, and we will start with Tuesday, where I believe Kyle Hendricks against the Giants, Jose Quintana at the Nationals, and I'm going to go with Brandon Pfaadt against the Rockies in Arizona.
Okay, that's defensible. I prefer Dean Kramer. Kramer against the Angels, at the Angels, without Trout, of course, and potentially without Ohtani, too.
Yeah, Brady
and
Singer.
Without Hunter Renfroe.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Brady Singer against the Angels. Against the White Sox, excuse me. It's probably not terrible. The White Sox are just so bad right now. And I probably would not use Connor Phillips in his debut. I know some people have asked me about that. It seems a little too risky to me. On Wednesday, we have Jordan Hicks against the Giants. We have Hyunjin Ryu at the Oakland A's. And I think that's it. I know Matt Manning did very well against the Yankees last time out, but now he's going to Yankee Stadium. He's got to face the Martian. I don't know. I don't love it.
I don't either. If you were forcing me to pick a third, that would be the third. But I agree that Jordan Wicks and Hyunjin Ryu are better choices.
All right. Well, we went a little bit long here, but gosh, 4 days worth of baseball to recap. There's a lot going on. We're going to wrap there. For Scott, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. And we will be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.